get that far. I feel like Jonathan way over hyped me as a teacher, so give me a lot to live up to with that. I think the reason you're excited that I'm up here is because the pattern was John, Jason, Jared, and should be Jonathan, but I'm not a J, all right? I'm not a J, but I'm up here anyway, which rhymes. So my topic tonight is the animals. So we'll get to that in a second. But I wanted to thank everyone for being here. I think it is great that we're having Vacation Bible School this year. It has been such a joy to see the kids, all the big smiles. If you weren't here last night, Nicole was baptized last night. That was just such a joy, such a great thing to witness. So excited for her and for her family, and definitely testimony of what a great family she has and what great nurturing and mentoring she receives in her home. So very excited for that. I think I say this every time I teach Vacation Bible School, but I think it's a great testimony to all of you who maybe don't have kids or grandkids that are up in the front, but you come and support the kids and grandkids. So I think adults who come to support the work and support even if other kids may be grown and well out of the house, to me that's a great testimony to your faith and your commitment to the Lord. So thank you for coming out and being a part of our class this week. Wanted to give a quick plug. I really will get to the lesson in a second, but wanted to give a quick plug for the youth rally we are hosting here on Monday night. We do still have some some open spots on the sign-up list back there for some food items we need. And that's another one, even though you may not have kids or grandkids, please come out and support that. There should be a lot of kids here from downstate. Don't know how many, but hopefully a lot of kids here from downstate. And I think it's really great. You'll be very encouraged if you come out and support that this coming Monday. And we'll start at 7 p.m. here, okay? And then we'll have food and everything afterwards. All right, so the topic tonight is animals. And there will be a little bit of overlap with Jared's fine lesson from last night. He did a great job. There's a little bit, the material kind of to me overlaps a little bit, but that's okay. I like my classes to be highly participatory because you don't want to just sit and listen to me for 45 minutes. So, first question, tell me something you know about the animals on the ark. What do you know? John? One? Okay, so there's two of every kind, sort. I think some translations say sort, maybe species. And those two were what? A male and a female, obviously for reproductive reasons, right, Jared?
There were 7 the animals that are in
Correct. 7 pairs of each, what they call clean animals. Very good. What else do we know? Say again? God sent them to Noah. I think that's a key point. Somebody said, I think Jason was talking about, something like the things he had never considered, even though, of course, the account of Noah's Ark from the time you're a small child. He said, how did Noah get all the wood to the construction site? Because he would have run out of trees, I guess, right there at the construction site pretty quick. How did he get all the trees there? What I hadn't really ever stopped to think, even though as you read Genesis 6, verse 20 closely, it says that the animals came to Noah. Because it would have been a massive undertaking to go out and capture, trap, tranquilize. They probably didn't have dart guns back then, right? How is he going to go out and get 2 of every type, much less figure out which ones are males and females, because that's not always easy, right? Wayne's first turtle, we called him Richard for several years until he finally learned enough to figure out Richard was a girl. So we still call her Richard, but that just seems wrong, right? It's not always easy to tell the boys from the girls in animal world, right? So that's a key point, I think, that Noah didn't have to go collect all these animals. They came to him. So God was helping him through the whole process, like Jared talked about last night. And I think Jason talked about Monday night as well. What else do we know about the animals? Uh-huh. Good point. I hadn't thought about that yet either. But yeah, there are animals that by themselves or without God's intervention probably would have been pretty frightening to have coming towards you. So, we don't get all the facts about, somebody else have something? We don't get all the facts about exactly when that happened. They just start coming in pairs, right before the rain started. Did more come and want to get in the boat and he had to turn some away? We don't know, right? Is there anything else we do know about the animals, Janie? That's what my friend Jared said. So that's actually what we're going to spend most of our, you've been looking at the notes, we're going to spend a good portion of our time talking about that and trying to prove, yes, there were, but I agree that there are. John? Quite possibly younger, because one of the objections or that people have about the ark is like, well, if there were dinosaurs, how would they ever fit? Right, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to get to that in a few minutes. Anything else about the animals that you know? All right, well, it's been great having everyone here tonight. We'll be having cookies later, and that's pretty much it, right? If it's just the animals, we're done, okay? Let's go to Genesis 6. I wanted to read a few verses, really just to substantiate the things that were already brought out, because you guys pretty much covered what the Bible talks about in terms of the animals. All right, so Genesis 6, just so we can all see it together, 19 and 20. And it says, and of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds after their kind, of animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind. 2 of every kind will, Leah's point, come to you to keep them alive. So verse 19 is what John said, 2 of every kind, male and female. And Leah talked about that they will come to Noah to be kept alive, which obviously was a huge help to Noah, that he didn't have to go out and capture all of them, right? Then if you go down just a couple of verses into chapter 7, verses 2 and 3, this is what Jared was talking about. You shall take with you 7 of each of every clean animal, a male and his female, 2 each of animals that are unclean, a male and his female, also 7 each of birds of the air, male and female, to keep the species alive on the face of all the earth. So 7 pair of clean, 2 pair of unclean, right? And then if you go over to chapter 8, verse 20, this is following, the rain. By this point, the rain had stopped, and, Noah's living post-flood life. And it says, Noah built an altar. I guess this is just after the flood, or kind of the rain had stopped, and they were able to exit the ark. But in verse 20 of chapter 8, it says, then Noah built an altar to the Lord, and took of every clean animal and of every clean bird, and offered burnt offerings on the altar. So one of the purposes to have extra numbers of clean animals was that they were then used for sacrifices after the flood, or after the event was over, and they were able to get back out of the ark. So again, that is pretty much what we know about the animals. There's plenty we don't know about the animals. Exactly, again, when they arrived, how they came in twos, how they knew to come in twos, other than God sent them. We don't know for sure that they were young or old. Jared had some information on that. We're going to talk about that here in a couple minutes. I always wondered what was the system inside the ark for dealing with the huge amount of waste that they would have produced, right? We don't know. The Bible doesn't tell us that, right? Obviously, God provided some way that was done. It's the right arrow, right, Brett? All right. There we go. All right. So we see the pairs of animals there. And we're going to then, since we've talked really about everything the Bible covers on the animals. Yes, sir, Steve? Well, I think, I think Jared actually mentioned that last night. I don't know that I have all the answers on that either. I assume that some fish live through the flood, I guess, since they could survive in water. I don't know, can a fish drown? Yeah. So I don't think they needed to bring fish on the ark. In fact, they would have died if they had been on the ark, right? That was a dumb point by me. Yes, sir. Ah, that's a good thought or interesting thought. Dave, do you have something? Right. We covered that Sunday night, I think, in well, John was here, but it was in Jeff Miller's video. There was a video we showed it for a few minutes on Sunday night that talked about Pangea. Am I saying that right? Fairly complicated for my small brain, but it was good stuff. All right, so what we're going to actually talk about, since we're not just going to go get cookies and talk for an hour, we're going to talk about what about the dinosaurs? And he kind of foreshadowed that. And again, we talked about that some last night. So I'm a little intimidated. This is Jeff Miller's material. You remember Jeff Miller? Some of you remember he was here last September. The dude knows his stuff backwards and forwards, and he wrote this material. I've heard Kyle Butt talk about this topic. I can't do either one of them any close to justice, but we'll see if we can do the best we can with what we have. So next question I would ask you, why do we care if there were dinosaurs on the ark? Why is this like an important question to consider? Brian? Exactly. Exactly. Really, I think, a pillar or cornerstone of evolution, which sadly, as we know, is taught as fact in schools. Certainly most public schools today teach it as fact. A cornerstone thought of that is just what Brian said, that the earth is, I don't know what they're saying today, 65 million years old or some such. And dinosaurs were, prehistoric animals that lived back millions of years ago and died millions of years ago and never cohabited the earth with humans, right? So if dinosaurs were in fact on the ark and lived in times when humans lived, and the flood was, roughly 6,000 years ago, maybe less, I guess. I don't know. I think we probably covered that and I forgot. But obviously dinosaurs would have been here again relatively recently, certainly compared to all the evolutionary nonsense that we hear. Joanne, do you have your hand up? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah, very, very well said. So yeah, this is why the whole dinosaur dilemma, some people call it the dinosaur dilemma, that's why it's so important, because this material we're going to talk about tonight is a very good way of, part of many, many good ways to combat evolution, okay? That's what we're going to talk about in our next half hour or however long we go. So does the Bible mention dinosaurs? Steve said, yeah. Job? Yep. It's in Job. We're going to go there in a second. So before we go there, though, because you guys are somewhat way ahead of me. So, does the Bible mention dinosaurs? Well, first of all, one thing to consider briefly is obviously the Bible doesn't mention every animal that's ever existed, right? Every animal that was on the ark. In fact, the huge majority of all animals are not mentioned in the Bible. You see here on a slide, there's 7 or so animals that most of them we have seen at the zoo. My son, who is a zookeeper in Memphis, actually takes care of the aardvarks and anteaters, so he can tell you a whole lot more about them than I can. But, even your house cats, obviously, them or some species of them, I'm sure was on the ark. They're not mentioned in the Bible. Neither are kangaroos or elephants or any of those other animals up there. So here's something I think that's interesting. That's a cute little picture of a cat. All right, so I like this timeline. So the Bible was completed. The last inspired book was written somewhere around 1900 years ago. The Bible was translated into English in 1535, okay? The English word dinosaur was not coined until 1842. So you would not have the word dinosaur actually used in the Bible because when it was translated, it was over 300 years before the word ever existed. All right? I'm not sure I knew this before looking at this material. So to me, that's interesting. The word dinosaur, as you see, means fearfully great lizard or fearfully great reptile. All right? So, modern translations after 1842 don't use the word dinosaur either. However, we do believe that there's lots of evidence that dinosaurs and humans coexisted. And the material breaks it into 3 sections, 3 types of evidence. And the first one is the Bible itself. And the Bible itself, it is believed, does mention dinosaurs, only not by that name. Okay, we're going to get into Steve. Give us a nice foreshadowing of that we'll get to in just a moment. So, next question is, so when did dinosaurs first appear on the earth? Day 6? Yep, day 6. Right? So Genesis chapter 1. Catch up here. Genesis chapter 1, and the days of creation. We usually sing about that in PBS, don't we? I don't think we've sung about that one this year to this point. But Genesis chapter 1, verses 24 and 25, that recounts the days of creation. Verse 24, then God said, let the earth bring forth a living creature according to its kind, cattle and creeping thing and beast of the earth, each according to its kind, and it was so. And God made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. So on day 6, and then of course we go on to verse 26, where God creates man in his own image. And of course we know that day 6 is when man came. So one would understand from God's word that the dinosaur would have been created on day 6, just like the other land animals, right? So if you want to know when dinosaurs appeared on the earth, day 6 of creation, I believe, would be the accurate answer. Okay? So, as it says here on the slide, there is no land animal that was not created on day 6. Therefore, dinosaurs would have started or came on day 6 with the other animals. Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. I know Jeff Miller covered that and quoted that verse multiple times when he was here last September. In 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all. Was it Jason that said there's nothing aller than all? I like that quote, right? There's nothing aller than all, right? Big little word all. You know, what's not included in all? That would be nothing, right? So all that is in them. So that's when we believe dinosaurs first came to the earth. So let's go to Job chapter 40. Imagine many of you were already aware of this, or, as Steve talked about, but again, I think it's good to read this for ourselves, not just take my word for it. Need to be reciting the books of the Bible so I can find Job a little faster. Right before Psalms. All right, Job chapter 40. We're going to read 15 through 24, as you see up there on the slide. Okay? Job 40, beginning in verse 15. It says, "Look now at the behemoth, which I made along with you. It eats grass like an ox. See now, his strength is in his hips, and his power is in his stomach muscles. He moves his tail like a cedar. The sinews, I guess, of his thighs are tightly knit. His bones are like beams of bronze, his ribs like bars of iron. He is the first of the ways of God. Only he who made him can bring near his sword. Surely the mountains yield food for him, and all the beasts of the field play there. He lies under the lotus trees in a covert of reeds and marsh. The lotus trees cover him with their shade, the willows by the brooks surround him. Indeed, the river may rage, yet he is not disturbed. He is confident though the Jordan gushes into his mouth, though he takes it in his eyes, or one pierces his nose with a snare." All right, so verse 15, look now at the behemoth. Anybody have a footnote that tries to tell you what that might be? Hippo? Jeff Miller talked about that there are translations that have a footnote that says hippo. Anybody remember what Jeff Miller explained was really wrong with that interpretation? Yeah. Verse 17? He moves his tail like a cedar. Does anybody know what a hippo's tail looks like? Little tiny little tail, right? Little tiny tail. No one would confuse a hippo's tail with a cedar, right? So pretty sure it's not a hippo. Anybody else have a different footnote or different thing? Yep, that is exactly what mine says as well. Large animal, exact identity, unknown. Okay? So, as you see on the slide, he moves his tail like a cedar would say he's got a really big tail. That's when we think of dinosaurs. And there's a lot of different kinds of dinosaurs, too. Go ahead, Jonathan. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, the cedar is used in Scripture to define a really, really, really big tree. I guess like we might say a redwood or something today. I think that's what you should when you think of when you read cedar. Okay? Good, thank you. So he moves his tail like a cedar. So this is an animal with a really huge tail, right? Which, again, we think of when we think of the massive Apatosaurus, your Tyrannosaurus rex, Brontosaurus, maybe. I think that's one of the big ones. Anyway, my kids had all the dinosaur figurines, so I learned a little bit. I love those things. Wesley, probably you still have some of those. Yeah, those are good things. All right, so tail like a cedar. 19 says he is the first or chief of the ways of God. 19 also says only he, being God who made him, can bring near his sword. Okay? That's some of the highlights of this passage. Again, biblical scholars, I believe, and I understand it, and I have no reason to doubt them, that this is talking about the dinosaur. Okay? So let's look at chapter 41. And we're not going to read really the whole chapter. 41 talks about what chapter 41, verse 1 says, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? Okay? And again, I have a footnote on that of a Leviathan, and it says a large sea creature, exact identity unknown. All right? I don't know if anybody has a different footnote for Leviathan. But if you look at, 1 and 2, I just read the first part of 1. Can you draw out Leviathan with a hook, or snare his tongue with a line which you lower? Can you put a reed through his nose or pierce his jaw with a hook? All right? So then it goes on. Again, we're not going to read all of this. But if you go down to 18 through 21, It says, his sneezings flash forth like, his sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth go burning lights, sparks of fire shoot out. Smoke goes out of his nostrils as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame goes out of his mouth. What does that sound like? A dragon, right? That sounds like what we would call a dragon, right? A fire-breathing dragon, all right? So, go on. We'll circle back to that thought in just a second. Hold that thought. So besides the Bible itself, which I would agree with those who said earlier when I said, does the Bible mention dinosaurs? I say yes, right, here in Job. You also have history, okay? So, you know, we read or saw in a couple of slides back that the word dinosaur was not used until the 1840s. Before that, they used the word dragon. Many cultures have ancient stories about dragons that closely resemble dinosaurs. So that, you know, stories or, you know, families pass stories down generation to generation to generation. Across a huge variety of cultures, they have stories about dragons. Okay, that's the idea with this. So I wanted to read a little bit, some of the material on this I thought was interesting. It is, yes, it's Apologetics Press. The word was coined in 1840. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've been to Big Bone. I mean, there's a lot of woolly mammoths and mastodons and stuff that they found around here. All the Apologetics Press guys? Yeah, they should go down to Big Bone the next time they come through. I don't know. Thank you, Jonathan. All right. So just want to read a couple paragraphs to you out of this material. It says, any honest person who reads the various dragon legends must admit that reptiles with long necks, scaly skin, horned heads, stout legs, and lengthy tails sound like dinosaurs. Dragon legends about flying snake-like reptiles with 2 legs, large wingspans, slender tails, and toothed beaks sound much more like the dinosaur-like flying reptiles of the past than any animal alive today. Even the stories of massive, powerful sea reptiles, at least one of which breathed fire, that's what we just read in Job 41, 18-21, sound very much like some of the dinosaur-like marine reptiles of the past. The fact is, history backs up what the Bible says. Humans and dinosaurs once lived together. In 2003, a nearly complete dinosaur skull was excavated in South Dakota. The long, knobby, spiky skull appeared so similar to descriptions and paintings of certain dragons, it actually was named Dracorex, which means Dragon King. You see the picture of the skeleton. I guess they found all the skull, and then I guess put an artist description or depiction of what the animal that went with that skull likely looked like. Called it Dracorex. Does anybody know where that skull is found if you want to go see it today? No. Not too far from here. No? Nope. The Children's Museum of Indianapolis. If you've ever taken your kids to the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, it has this skull, apparently, at least when this material was printed. They say that it now possesses a skull. I love that Children's Museum. We went there several times with the kids. Really, really fun. Anyway, let's see. It now possesses a skull. We refer to it as a new type. They refer to it, of course, the Children's Museum isn't going to be based on scripture. They refer to it as a new type of dinosaur that looks like a dragon. The Children's Museum even displayed a statement next to a Dracorex image that reads, "When we saw this creature's head, we weren't sure what kind of dinosaur it was. Its spiky horns, bumps, and long muzzle looked more like a dragon. A dinosaur that looks more like a dragon, maybe that's because they were dragons, right? Dragons and dinosaurs are simply two different words that can refer to the same creature or same type of creature." So again, if people, all cultures throughout the world, are handing out stories about dragons, and we think that's really the same word for dinosaur, what would that tell you? What would the conclusion be? That they're real and they lived when? Same time as people, right? If you want to describe, this is an example just to make the point, although, I don't think you need an extra example, but John used me in his lesson the other night. So if I ask you to describe John, how would you describe John? Ice cream eater. Anything else? Handsome guy, right? Fun, tall, mustache, right? The point is, if I ask you to describe John, you can do that because why? Because you've seen him, right? The legends, the stories that handed down about dragons / dinosaurs, the reason that they could tell those stories and have a mental picture of those things is because they saw them, right? So that's the idea with this. All right, Jared, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great point. And the other thing, we're going to get to this, I won't jump too far ahead of myself, but we think of dinosaurs as these huge giant creatures, that we saw in the Flintstones, right? They bred, in the rock quarry with on the back of the dinosaur, and it was humongous, right? And he'd slide down when it was quitting time. Remember that? I love that cartoon. So we think about all those, and again, Wesley and his brothers have all these, big T-Rex, things at home and everything. But most dinosaurs weren't really that big. And we're going to get to that here in a couple minutes. All right, so physical evidence. Go on here a little ways. All right, so I'm going to read about a few things here. There's a gazillion of these types of examples and findings under the idea of physical evidence, but okay, I'm going to start here. So it says, similar to how we take pictures of places we visit and wildlife we see in modern times. So like if you go to the zoo, you take pictures. If you go to the national park, you see an elk or a bison or a moose. If you're really lucky, you see a moose, right? You take pictures, right? Those living thousands or hundreds or thousands of years ago actually drew and carved pictures of dinosaurs. Such representations of dinosaurs are exactly what we would expect if humans ever saw these animals. That's what the point I was just making. I can describe John because I've seen him. The people who drew pictures of dinosaurs had seen them, right? Although rarely discussed in the mainstream media, ancient dinosaur artwork have been found all over the world. And these are just a few examples. They call it the Stegosaurus of Cambodia, an approximately 900-year-old carving of what appears to be a Stegosaurus was found on the continent of Asia in the country of Cambodia. Centuries before learning about dinosaurs from the fossil record, a variety of these creatures were pictured in various castles in Europe. So I've seen pictures of vases that had dinosaurs etched on the side of them, right? Back in the day. The Ica, I guess you say it, stones of Peru. In South America, hundreds of ancient burial stones have been found with dinosaurs carved on them. The Apatosaurus of southeastern Utah. And Apatosaurus was one of the bigger types of dinosaur. In North America, various rock drawings and carvings have been found that clearly depict different dinosaurs. This one I like. I think this is really interesting stuff. So this is kind of the idea of the soft tissue, okay? So again, I'm going to read a little bit to you because this is easier to read than try to explain and mess up. But in recent years, scientists have unearthed a variety of dinosaur bones from around the world that are not completely fossilized. They actually contain intact protein fragments, including ones known as collagen and elastin, right? After using chemicals to dissolve away the minerals, scientists have seen what appears to be a network of soft, transparent vessels and cells. However, since according to evolutionists, proteins and tissue normally degrade quickly after an animal dies, this research has remained, in their words, controversial, okay? Now that the once controversial dinosaur proteins have been confirmed, are evolutionists reconsidering the age of dinosaur fossils? Are evolutionists considering the possibility that dinosaurs may have lived thousands of years ago rather than 65 plus million years ago? Apparently not, at least not in their writings. Yet the physical and historical evidence, along with the Bible, clearly testify that man and dinosaurs lived together and that evolution's timeline is hopelessly flawed. Which again, that's the key thing we want to understand, talk, and be able to tell other people about dinosaurs, because it really refutes a lot of the principles that evolution seems to be, the house of cards that evolution seems to be built upon, okay? So this idea of soft dinosaur tissue, I'm sure that made sense to everyone, but just to expound on it a little bit, if something has been fossilized or has been a fossil for thousands and thousands and thousands and millions, if that you want to buy into that, years, there's not going to be soft tissue, right? So if they've got dinosaur fossils and they can still find soft tissue with collagen and elastin still preserved in there, that means it wasn't that long ago that those became fossils. Again, the idea humans, dinosaurs were co-located on the earth, right? All right. Comments, questions, concerns? Got 5 or 10 minutes left. Anybody wants to add anything, they'll jump right in. I don't know. I don't think that's in the material. We are going to kind of talk about something very close to that here in just a second. So I don't know that I'm going to answer your question directly, but we're going to kind of get to that general topic. Good question, Bonnie. So then we come back. Jared, are you saying that dinosaurs were on the ark? That's what Jared's saying. Okay. All right. So with that, let me find my notes here. Get too far out of line. Again, some of the thought was, could dinosaurs really have been on the ark because dinosaurs were so big? They were taking up too much space, right? It's one of the, how could they have fit on the ark? So a couple facts. The largest fossil dinosaur eggs indicate that a 40-foot long dinosaur, would be really big, actually laid eggs that were less than a foot in diameter. The average size of dinosaur, again, not all of them were the the big ones. Not all of them were T-Rexes, not all of them were Apatosaurus, not all of them were Brontosaurus, not all of them were the big giant ones. The average size of a dinosaur, because again, there were many, many different types of dinosaurs, the average size of a dinosaur was about the size of an American bison. Again, the average. Obviously, you had these humongous ones, then you had a lot of littler ones, right? As hatchlings, even the largest dinosaurs were no bigger than an average house pet, so when they were born. So again, the theory, or a theory, is that the dinosaurs that were put on the ark may have been young. I think Jared covered that last night as well, right? Younger ones would have been better, have longer lifespans, be able to breed and have more little dinosaurs after coming out of the ark than if they had had full-grown bigger ones. So they may have had a T-Rex on the ark, but maybe it was an infant-sized T-Rex and his female, right? So that's one possibility. Other possibilities or other things to think about, I think, not all dinosaurs were massive. And, God created all things. He knew how big to make the ark. He gave the dimensions, and he sent the animals, right? He told Noah how big to make it. As we read in Genesis chapter 6, verse 20, he sent the animals to Noah. So Noah didn't have to figure out, do I get the big giant ones over there, however I get them to come into the ark, or do I get the little tiny little ones? God sent the ones he wanted in the ark to Noah. Okay, so I think that's an important point. So, Bonnie, to get a little bit towards your question, what happened to the dinosaurs? Because I think dinosaurs are really cool, and my kids always loved playing with dinosaurs, talking about dinosaurs, but we don't have any dinosaurs anymore, right? It's kind of a bummer. So, if they survived the flood, which we believe they were in the ark, so therefore there would have been some that survived the flood, what happened to them? Okay? And Bonnie's question was, when did something happen to them? And I'm not sure that I have that answer. But some of the theories, one is he changed in the environment. So, before the flood, somebody fact check me and tell me if I'm wrong. Before the flood, I don't believe it had ever rained, right? Is that what we understand, that it never rained? Dave has some sort of horns on his head, is nodding yes. So, and I believe someone who's dressed like Dave. So, it had never rained before. How long did people live before the ark, before the flood? Hundreds and hundreds of years. Noah was, 600 or something when the ark? And Methuselah was 969, right? 969. A long time, right? People lived hundreds of years before the flood. Their life expectancies or their life spans were much less after the flood. So one hypothesis about that was that the environment was much different, right? I don't know what all the differences would shorten the lifespans, but the fact seems undeniable that the lifespans did shorten quite a bit after the flood. Another thought is they could have been hunted into extinction. So if you go, we'll look at these. We got a couple minutes, I think. I think it's 7:30, so it must be craft time. So Genesis 9, verses 2 and 3. I think I need a new Bible and I can just pull pieces out, right? This is my son Wayne's Bible from when he was like 10 years old. And for some reason, that's the one I carry around. So Genesis 9, verses 2 and 3. And the fear of you and the dread of you shall be on every beast of the earth, on every bird of the air, on all that move on the earth, and on all the fish of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs. So this is God speaking to Noah and basically saying, all these animals that we saved, you can eat them, right? So maybe they got hunted to extinction. If you go over to chapter 10, I got to pull my little portable section back out again. Chapter 10, verse 8. This is my pocket version of Genesis, I guess. Genesis chapter 8 or 10, verse 8. Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord. And then we can go on. But the point being, it talks about mighty hunters even back in, just after the flood. So perhaps they got hunted into extinction, right? So I think the answer, unfortunately, Bonnie, is we're not sure when the dinosaurs actually went extinct or exactly why. Maybe it was a combination of environment and hunting. Laura may know something that I don't. I'm sure she does. Go ahead. good point. Mhm. There you go. So yeah, good, great point. So I assume everybody over here heard what Laura said, but it appears that, Job was, what did you say, around 400 years at least post-flood. And the book of Job talks about Behemoth and Leviathan, so very likely at least the dinosaurs persisted that long. Dave, go ahead. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the dogs go back to, one of the other classes had a pic, was that your class, Jared? The wolf and the, I don't know what all it was. Well, yeah, wolf, coyote, fox and stuff, and then of course all the gazillion breeds of dogs we have, right? And now everything gets mixed with a poodle. Right, right. So we have an infinite number of dogs that have oodle at the end, including one at my house. So anyway, thank you, Laura, for that comment. All right, so a few points of application that we can touch on briefly. And I guess we could read these scriptures, but basically these scriptures say that the Bible tells us everything we need to know, and we don't have all the answers to every question. And I think Jared maybe even made this point last night, that, or if it wasn't him, Jay. So the point has been made recently in one of the classes that, we all can ask a lot of questions about dinosaurs and about the ark and the animals and I even threw out a couple earlier questions. God gives us everything we need to know. We don't have to know what they did, how they got the waste out, or if it just smelled really, really bad in the ark, right? We don't have to know that. I'm curious how long the dinosaurs lasted too, but we don't have to know that to live a godly life. If God needed us to know, I suppose he would have told us, right? So that's one piece of something to take away or remember. Then it makes the point God does not and will not ask us to do the impossible. That's obviously a very good lesson from Noah in general. And Jared I keep quoting him from last night because, again, I think there's a lot of overlap, and I thought his class was really good. But there's, there was all the objections that people have about, well, the ark, he didn't have enough time to build it. He didn't have enough material. He wasn't smart enough to build it. God would not have given Noah those instructions if it was impossible to do. So God gave him the capability to do it. God very likely supplied, all the raw materials for him to do it. God sent the animals to him. God had a plan for this to save Noah and the righteous few, just like God has a plan to save us, and executed that plan through Jesus and his sacrifice on the cross and everything. So, God didn't ask Noah to do this if it couldn't be done. Jonathan, go ahead. Yeah, that's a great comment. Jason really hit hard on that. I thought very well said on Monday night, in using evangelism specifically. But any of the other scriptures that maybe you struggle with because, that's difficult. If you have a struggle with a certain thing, maybe it's, I don't know. I hate to start naming sins, but maybe there's certain sins that are harder for you to get past than others. if God's asking you not to engage in that behavior or commit that sin, it's possible for you not to do that, right? God asks us, Great Commission says we need to be evangelizing, and a lot of us, including me, sees that as difficult, and we get kind of scared, and we don't feel confident, and look for excuses and all that stuff that I'm guilty of doing, but God wouldn't ask us to do it if it was impossible, right? Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that's Isaiah 55:9. Go ahead. Mm-hmm. Right, right. Yeah, yeah. You ever think about writing down all your questions you want to ask God someday? That would be a big list, wouldn't it? Go ahead, Bill. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. It's Isaiah 55:8 and 9, right? Yeah. And then the last one, go ahead, Dave. Oh. The last point is just if we do our part, God will do his part. And I think we see that really borne out in the account of the ark. We talked a lot on, was that Monday night, about Noah, Noah's faith and Noah's resolve and Noah's work to get the ark built. And, he did his part, and God did his part. God saved him. God also did his part by providing the animal. Again, I've kind of harped on this a little bit, but God sent the animals to him. He didn't have to go get them. So God helped Noah, and God kept his promise. God kept his side of the bargain, if you will. But Noah had to do his piece too, right? So, that gets in that whole grace and mercy, but that doesn't mean that we don't have to, do what God commands us to do and be obedient and do our part as far as our salvation as well. Go ahead, Dave, with your comment. Mm-hmm. I don't know. He's had some fatalities, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the key thing. And, you'll have, again, back to the objections or the skeptics, you know, like, no, there's no way man could have, that day could have been smart enough to build the ark, or there's no way there would have been enough, all the skeptics. If you don't want to believe in God, you'll come up with something. But, part of understanding the whole story of Noah is Noah had faith and God did his part. And we need to have the faith, even though we don't know exactly how God did all that. We read that God did. And God had to be with Noah through the whole thing, start to finish, right? Somebody else? Mm-hmm. Yep. Good point, Bill. Thank you. Anybody else have a comment? I think we're just about to our time. All right. Well, again, thank you for being here. and supporting the kids, supporting our VBS, and for all the good comments in class. Appreciate it.